While women overall are promoted at lower rates, for Black women and Latinas, the drop-off is the steepest. It's because that bias shows up every day in everyday decisions. Why am I watching people with less experience run the very programs that I architected? Welcome back to Executive Transformation, the space where we tell the truth about leadership and power and what it actually takes to transform systems that were never built with us in mind. I'm Lisa Bennings, and I work with women of color who are already leading transformation in their companies, but they're often doing this without the title, without the recognition or the budget, and definitely without the spotlight. Today, we're talking about the leadership crisis in corporate America. And this has been sitting in my spirit for a long time. And it's about who gets to transform, who gets paid to transform, and who gets left out of the story altogether. Now, this isn't going to be a polite conversation. So if you're in the car, I want you to take a breath, because this one might pinch a little, but it might also feel like a relief. Let's start with hard truths that are hard to hear. The first one is the transformation market, where we decide the future of industry, infrastructure, and innovation is still dominated by one profile: white men. Now, that's not blame, but it is imbalance, because when one perspective defines what vision looks like for what an executive president should be, or what risk even is, it shrinks the possibilities of what leadership can actually become. Here are 3 hard truths that we have to say out loud. Hard truth number 1. When women of color, especially Black women, look up and we don't see anyone that looks like us in the rooms where strategy is getting set, the message is subtle, but it's very sharp. There's no place for us here. Hard truth number 2, the system will happily use your genius for transformation, and that's your ability to calm chaos, to build those bridges and drive outcomes. They'll use it without ever formally recognizing you as a transformation leader. And hard truth number 3, people don't aspire to roles that they can never see. They stop reaching for ladders where every rung looks like it's out of reach. Representation is not just optics, it's oxygen. I want to talk about the 3 fractures that we see in this. The 3 fractures are the role model deficit, the sponsorship gap, and the broken rung. The role model deficit shows up when boards, VP tables are full of seasoned white men. So when women of color walk into those rooms searching for some type of reflection, we don't find any. And because, as we all know, without role models, the belief evaporates, and so does the retention. The sponsorship gap. Advancement isn't just a clean meritocracy. It's built on proximity to power, to advocates, to opportunity. And for many white men, those networks were built over decades. The golf outings, the alma maters that they share, their legacies. But for most women of color, every single connection has to be earned from scratch. I know I had to earn them. And then the broken rung, that first promotion from individual contributor to manager. While women overall are promoted at lower rates, for Black women and Latinas, the drop-off is the steepest. It's not actually because they lack capacity or capability, but it's because that bias shows up every day in everyday decisions. Someone who gets tapped, who gets trusted, who gets the benefit of the doubt. And when you miss that first promotion, the pipeline fractures, which means by the time the decisions reach the C-suite, diversity has already been filtered out. That is the leadership crisis. Not that we don't have enough leaders, but the system that chooses keeps choosing from the same shelf. Let's move into the hard truths, shall we? Things that you know that you may not say on a Zoom call, but you might feel in your body at 2 a.m. Heart truth number 1. We are so damn tired of being the only woman of color in the transformation room, the only Latina who owns the strategy at the offsite, or the only Black woman who's asked to translate between the front line and the C-suite. We're exhausted. We're carrying around all that representation tax and we pretend that it's not heavy. But here's the heart truth number 2 that goes with this. You start to question yourself. If I'm so good at this, why am I still fighting for the basic recognition? Why am I watching people with less experience run the very programs that I architected? That's the cognitive dissonance, and that eats away at your confidence. Heart truth number 3, you want to leave, but you also want to stay. Part of you fantasizes about walking away from the whole thing, just cleaning the whole slate. But another part of you knows you're exactly the kind of leader that these systems need. And it's that inner tug of war that's real. So if you're listening as a white leader, here's a heart truth for you too. You might not see yourself as part of the problem because you may be kind, progressive, well-intentioned. But if you're not actively shifting the power, you're actually benefiting from a status quo that limits who gets access to opportunity and decision-making every single day. And this is where courageous leadership becomes a choice. Do you use your position to rebalance power and open access? Or do you keep operating in ways that protect your comfort? Let me ground this in a story. I'll call her Maya. Maya is a senior leader in a Fortune 500 company. She's been there over a decade. Whenever something breaks, her name quietly gets pulled into emergency meetings because she's the fixer. The company launches now a massive digital transformation. Big name consultants come in, big budget. And then they realize no one actually understands the messy reality of their business operations. So they tap Maya. Hey, Maya, come here. She comes in and she sits on all the steering committees. She translates the vendor jargon into business impact. And then she calms those executives. She's coaching those middle managers. And she's designing the workarounds that make those pretty slides even remotely close to something that can be implemented. Her calendar is full. Her nights are long. And she's mentoring younger women of color because she doesn't want them to fall by the wayside or fall through the cracks. She becomes essentially the chief architect of the transformation without the title, without the compensation, and unfortunately, without her name on the big announcement emails. So 18 months later, at the town hall, the CEO is congratulating the executive sponsor, the consulting partner, and a handful of visible leaders without even a mention or a whisper of Maya's name anywhere. So later her manager comes up to her and she says, "We couldn't have done it without you, Maya. You're our secret weapon. You're our rock, our glue." All of the intimacy words, but none of the power words. And if that's a leadership crisis, it's a crisis in one woman's body. The organization is celebrating a transformation success while the person who made it possible is debating whether or not she can stay. If you've heard yourself in Maya, you are not imagining it, and you are not alone. I want to offer you a simple framework you can carry with you. The 4 shifts of transformational power. I call it the 4TP. And it's so simple. C, sponsor and share, systematize. That's 4. Shift 1, C. You name what's real. You tell the truth about the role model deficit, the sponsorship gap, and the broken rung. As a woman of color, C means tracking where your work actually lands, putting your impact into business language while also noticing the invisible emotional labor you do. That's translating leadership. It's decisions, it's coaching, it's smoothing conflict, and supporting burned out teammates. All of that never shows up in your title, in your goals, and definitely not in your bonus. Shift number 2, it's the sponsor and the share. We move from advice to access and visibility. So sponsorship means putting your political capital on the line. You say names in rooms where decisions are made. Sharing means you bring people along with you. You share the mic, you share the credit. And shift number 3, systematize. As long as inclusion depends upon some individual heroics, it will always be fragile. Systematizing means baking inclusion into how transformation works, how it gets staffed, how it gets measured and rewarded, who gets high visibility roles and who is on the slate, and what scorecards are we using to build that bench. If you hold positional power, it can be as simple as a monthly sponsorship commitment or holding a quarterly power calendar review. And this is where you ask yourself, whose goals did my time actually advance? That's what sponsorship is. Now let me bring this into a few concrete power moves. I've made these and I invite you to make them too. Power move number 1. I stopped auditioning for rooms where I was already running the transformation. I narrate my impact in receipts, not feelings. So it's, I led this initiative, here's the result, here's the timeline. Power move number 2. I treat every interaction as data because we don't need any more validation. It's not, do they like me, but it's more like, does this ecosystem even deserve me? Power move number 3. My values are non-negotiable. If a role requires me to betray myself in any way, then that role is just wrong. It's not for me. Because courage doesn't live in the polished statement on the website or the once-a-year workshop. It lives in the promotion meetings, the budget calls, and who actually gets the nod. If transformation is your mission, make sure you're not just changing the systems, you're changing who has access to shape them. Now, if you felt called out, seen, or a little less alone, I want you to do 2 things. First, start your receipts file today. I want you to open a notebook or a document, and I want you to list 5 to 10 outcomes that you've driven in the last 6 to 12 months. For each one of them, I want you to ask, what was broken? What did I lead? What changed because I was there? What metric moved? What risk was avoided? What relationship was strengthened? Those are the things you need to ask yourself because that's your leadership evidence. That's your leverage. Second, share this episode. Share it with one person who holds power and access, and with one person of color who's a woman of color who you know is carrying too much in silence. She's not the problem, and neither are you. If you're a woman of color leading transformation and you're ready to start being recognized as the transformation leader, you already are. Let's stay connected. Inside the transformation studio and lab, we build those type of skills, strategies, and support structures that you were never supposed to have access to. The executive presence on your own terms, the influence without self-erasure, and a playbook for negotiating power instead of just managing the chaos. You can find the details in the show notes or connect with me on LinkedIn and tell me more about what resonated the most from this episode. The future of transformation depends on who gets to transform, and that's not politics, that's progress. Own your voice, own your power, be intentional, and hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you in the next episode.